Thanks for joining us on Times Now. Our top focus: just days before the Lok Sabha elections are expected to be announced, Election Commissioner Arun Goel has resigned from the post. His tenure was till 2027. A Gazette notification by the Union Law and Justice Ministry said that the President accepted the resignation tendered by Arun Goel earlier today. Now remember, Goel's resignation comes at a time when the three-member commission was down to two after the retirement of Election Commissioner Anup Chandra Pandey in February. With Goel's resignation now being accepted, it leaves only the Chief Election Commissioner Rajiv Kumar in the panel. Goel, a former IAS officer, took office as the Election Commissioner on November 21st, 2022. Now, for more on this, let me bring in our Executive Editor, Madhavdas Gopalakrishnan. Madhav, good evening. What do you make of this?
Well, there's no official statement yet, Pranesh, but certainly, of course, it does lead to a situation where you have opposition parties talking about the circumstances where two election commissioners are not present. We're at a situation where already there is a lot of speculation about when the poll schedule is likely to be announced. Remember, in 2019 Lok Sabha election, the date was the 10th of March, and we're pretty much there now. So how quickly can the election schedule be announced? How soon can it be announced? There's a lot of speculation that will happen in the coming week. Yeah, these circumstances, when one election commissioner, Anup Chandra Pandey, has already retired last month, and now another election commissioner, that is Arun Goel, has resigned despite the fact that he had 3 years of his tenure left. Remember, in the normal course, if he had not resigned, he would have become, as per sources, the chief election commissioner, the next chief election commissioner after Rajiv Kumar in February next year. So what were these circumstances? Are they personal reasons? Are they professional reasons? Are they otherwise? That's a question that certainly comes to mind. Some information coming in from sources say that there was some kind of dissent that was recorded by, in fact, Mr. Goel at certain meetings of the Election Commission. Remember, the Election Commission full bench meets twice a week to deliberate upon the various issues that are pending before it, from poll preparedness to various other issues relating to either the model code, when elections are, of course, the model code is in force and elections are happening, as well as several other pending issues related to symbols, etc., whatever disputes they may be in the quasi-judicial role of the Election Commission. There was some dissent is what we understand. However, whether that dissent is directly linked to the resignation is not really clear at the moment. So at this point of time, the absence of some kind of an official statement coming in from the Election Commission, certainly, of course, this gives room to various opposition parties to raise questions about the manner in which the elections would be held, A, and B, also whether we would be looking at a situation where the government would be appointing two election commissioners immediately to ensure that the elections are conducted smoothly. Back to you.
Now, there's also a case that went to the Supreme Court, but that was quashed, Madhav. People have already started talking about, there is chatter on it. Would you like to throw more light on it?
Well, remember that when Arun Goel was appointed, he was appointed amidst this entire controversy because after he had reportedly resigned, had come this post of him as the election commissioner. Remember that he was a secretary to the government of India in the heavy industries department, and that was in last year, and that was the circumstance which was questioned. It was taken even to the court. The court had, of course, raised questions about the hurry. There were several issues that had been raised by petitioners, in fact, in this entire matter. But eventually, of course, the appointment itself was settled. Now, those were the situations that we had seen as far as Mr. Arun Goel, as far as joining the Election Commission itself, had been controversial in the past. Now, what are the exact circumstances under which he has left the Election Commission? There are several questions at this point of time that remain unanswered, and perhaps it's only the Election Commission or the Government of India that can throw more light on what really is the situation and what we are likely to see in coming days.
Now, Madhav, the opposition has already started commenting on it. You have reactions from the TMC, RJD. They are calling it a concerning situation. Now, in light of what has happened, what is the road ahead? What happens from here on?
Well, it depends completely on the government, because remember, the appointment of the election commissioners takes place at the behest of the government. It is a law ministry that, in fact, would decide. Of course, the cabinet and the government will have to take a final call in terms of the actual appointment of the election commissioner. And once that appointment process or the decision-making process is completed, then the election commissioners come in to work as the election commissioners. In the past, we've seen now why this is also very significant, Pranesh, is that we must remember that in the late 90s, when the entire election commission and the manner of functioning went through an entire overhaul, where earlier there was only the chief election commissioner. Later on, the two added election commissioners were added to the panel, and therefore it was a panel that would make decisions, is what was decided when the entire structure, the entire architecture of the leadership of the election commission was changed. Now, of course, for the first time, perhaps we're going into a Lok Sabha election where there are 2 seats vacant on that particular panel, that of both the election commissioners for the circumstances I mentioned earlier, the retiring of Anup Chandra Pandey, one of the election commissioners, and now the resignation of Arun Goel. This is a rather unique circumstance that the election commission is staring at, and therefore, given the fact that in the past close to 3 decades, we haven't seen a situation like this, what the government does from here on will be very, very important to look at, because all of this does have a bearing on the conduct of elections. Remember, as I was mentioning earlier, it is the world's largest logistical exercise. It's the largest movement of men and material anywhere in the world, and that's why. And in fact, various countries study India's election model, which also has received, for instance, in the past, Six Sigma certification. In such circumstances, certainly there are questions as to, whether the process will be conducted smoothly, the planning for which, of course, happens not months, but perhaps years in advance. And in that light, very, very significant to see how the government views this, the seriousness and the speed with which the government reacts to these circumstances is certainly going to be something that everyone will look at very closely.
Now, Madhav, my final question to you is this, and again, people from the opposition are talking about it. They're talking about the panel that has the power to pick the election commissioner, that has the Prime Minister, one cabinet minister, and the leader of opposition.
Yes, of course, it is normally the appointments committee of the cabinet that looks into the high-level placements as far as senior government functionaries are concerned. And of course, in this particular case, it is a separate panel that in fact has been proposed following that very hearing that we were talking about, where the government in fact had changed the law, or at least amended the law as far as the process of appointment is concerned. There is a panel that has in fact now been put in place. If you remember, the controversy was earlier that it was the Chief Justice who was part of the panel, and instead of the Chief Justice, it was a minister who was added in the place of the Chief Justice. Opposition parties have then said that this is skewing the process and that it would lead to charges of unfairness as far as the procedure of appointment is concerned. But be that as it may, that's the background that has already taken place as far as the appointment process is concerned. Now, of course, we will have to see how quickly the government looks at this particular issue and what they really feel is the immediate necessity in terms of appointing another panel member. Remember that already this has been under the consideration of the government, given that Mr. Pandey's resignation happened close to a month back. So obviously the government is obviously seized of this matter. And now, of course, with this additional vacancy coming up in the election commission, how does the government propose to resolve this is certainly something that we will all be looking at closely.
Madhav, thank you for that comprehensive input and for putting things in perspective. Viewers, essentially, the Chief Election Commissioner